Labbers, and welcome to Guild Wars 2 Daily. Today we're going to be doing a newsy type thing, also with a mechanics question on there as well. The footage in the background comes from the Doom Cannon 1, whose footage I used yesterday but accidentally didn't say it out loud on the video and had to edit in a crappy little line there on the screen. So I'm using it again just to give the person an actual shout out that they deserve. So thank you very much to the Doom Cannon. You can find a link down in the description below if you want to check out their other stuff. There's a huge video, like 4 hours long on there, of just pretty much everything they did on the stress test a while ago, which is really cool, and just plenty of cool stuff. So anyway, there you go, feel free to check it out. And really, I wanted to open up by mentioning a couple of things that kind of caught my eye today that people were talking about in Guild Wars 2 news. The first one, of course, is that a new blog has come out on the ArenaNet blog. They are looking for another character artist, or in fact more than one character artist. They don't actually say how many positions there are, but they say that there are multiple positions within their character art team. So you can, if you want, if you fancy yourself a bit of an artist and you think you'd like to get work in the game industry, then you can apply for this position. To do it, they actually want you to submit some work that they might be able to use, I guess, of some concept art. So they've provided some concept art, and it's your job to make the textures essentially that would end up being in game, and they'll, I guess, judge you on that and then decide if they're going to take you on the team. What's more interesting to the majority of us, though, that this blog post could mean is that ArenaNet still don't have enough character artists, and this could be why we've seen so few skins there in the game. I find it funny that this late on in the game's development, for a game that is based, its end game at least, in PvE and PvP as well, actually, you can get your glory and you will spend that glory on more skins and things. So for a game that is so based on cosmetic progression, it's funny to me that they seem to not have that many skins and things in game. And certainly for this beta weekend event, I found a hell of a lot more skins, and there seemed to be a lot more variety in the kind of loot that I was getting and that was being dropped all over the place. But there still doesn't seem to be that much, and there doesn't seem to be much choice as far as armors go either, at least in early game PvE. And I suppose that just the fact that they've now announced that these positions are going at ArenaNet just kind of reaffirms that they do have a lot of work to go on in that area. Whether they're hoping that these artists will come on at ArenaNet and then create a load of new armors and things for all the various races and introduce lots of variety for the game at launch, rather than once it's already launched and then we begin streaming updates and microtransactions that are obviously going to be cosmetic stuff. That's one thing we've always really known is going to be in Guild Wars 2 ever since it arrived in Guild Wars 1. When that first happened in Guild Wars 1, everyone immediately said straight away they're only doing this in Guild Wars 1 so they can do it in Guild Wars 2 and justify it as being there in the first game. So we know that that's going to be happening in Guild Wars 2. They're going to have microtransactions that are selling new suits of armor. Are these new artists going to be for that, or are ArenaNet hoping to add in some more variety? I'd hope really that they're going to try and get some more variety before the game launches, and then possibly have these guys going for expansions or microtransactions or whatever. But it is something they're still looking to. I suppose it's an interesting point that they need a lot more of these kinds of artists for Guild Wars 2 than they ever did for Guild Wars 1, just because of all the races. For Guild Wars 1, it was as simple as, oh, hey, everyone's a human and they're either a male or a female. And while in the actual games as they came out, armor was then split across into professions. For the microtransactions, they just had one armor that was for male and then another armor that was for female. And that was it. They didn't change it past that. So it was really easy to add these new cosmetic skins to the game that people could then buy. It was actually really simple for Guild Wars 1. For Guild Wars 2, they can't get away with that. They're not doing it by profession anymore. They've split them into 3 different camps. But beyond that as well, you've now got the 5 races too. Whether the microtransactions will ignore the different armor classes. So for example, you can buy a microtransaction that your warrior, a heavy armor wearer, can wield and it will look exactly the same as, say, your elementalist who's wearing light armor typically. Whether you can do that, or whether they'll differentiate, and one set of armor you buy in the gem store will actually have many different looks depending on the armor class, is interesting to me. I doubt they'll go that far though. They'll probably just make a male and female version of it for every single individual race and keep it there. I doubt very much that they then sell a microtransaction. So say they release Orion armor, okay, I doubt that they would go Asuran Orion armor would be sold separately to non-Orion armor and human. They might go with that, but I feel like that would be a bit cheap and a bit of a rip-off unless these things were very, very cheap, truly microtransactions. But yeah, it's interesting anyway. So ArenaNet certainly are still hiring and expanding in that department, which I think is good, because I thought that was somewhere that the beta was lackluster. Whether this has an impact for the game at launch though is questionable, and once again, I suppose it is vaguely relevant if you do want to become an artist in the games industry. There's actually an opening here. There'll probably be a link down in the description as long as I don't forget. Another newsy type thing, I suppose, sort of, was in the beta forums. Actually, they announced that you can get to level 80 purely from crafting. So in Guild Wars 2, I don't really talk about crafting that much on Guild Wars 2 Daily, but in Guild Wars 2, because obviously you have professions in this game, and that's your main class, because they decided to change the names, which obviously carries over from Guild Wars 1, but in any case, they're trying to break the convention there. So because you already have a profession, and that's like your combat class, what is known as a profession in other MMOs is now known as your discipline. So you've got these different disciplines, your crafting professions for Guild Wars 2, and there's 8 of them. There are 8 of these different disciplines, and apparently if you max every single one of these out, you'll get experience from that equivalent to what is necessary to reach level 80 for combat, which is really, really kind of interesting. I didn't think that they'd go all out like that. Essentially what they've done here is set it up that you can have a character that will be a complete and utter pacifist and will reach the level cap without killing a single damn thing. The intro, obviously tutorial aside, I guess you could get through the tutorial at the start of the game without killing stuff if you like piggybacked off other people, but that would be quite difficult to do. But I'm wondering whether, because they've added this into the game, which is really cool and obviously is a wonderful move for a lot of crafters, people that want to play the MMO just as a crafter actually kind of have the opportunity here now, I'd say. Although they've done it for that purpose, I wonder whether they're going to add achievements in that pretty much say, right, you got to level 80 just through crafting experience. That would be a very cool, very prestigious achievement, and I'd quite like to see a title like that come into the game. I think really the lines are blurred a little bit. People are now talking about, oh, I'm just going to have a character that only ever crafts. I'm not sure whether just because this is possible, the game has been designed to encourage you to do it. I think there is a difference there. I think getting to max level in all the disciplines, and that's all you did for gameplay, could get very, very tedious. I think crafting still in Guild Wars 2 is very much meant to be a supplement to the gameplay rather than the core of the gameplay. So if you are making plans to do something like that, I would just warn you that it is probably something just to challenge yourself and not what ArenaNet are expecting you to do, despite the fact it's possible. I think if they were expecting you to do it, they would have made crafting far more in-depth and had a lot more in there. And also, you know, it's not as simple as that anyway. Let's say you are trying to craft all the way up to level 80 max and all of these things. Well, you need to go and gather and get materials. And if you're not sitting on an arse load of money so you can just buy all of those materials from other characters, or you're not sitting on a mountain of stuff that's in your storage from other characters already on your account, you're going to have to go out and explore and go to nodes and cut down stuff. And arguably, that's a big part of what crafting is anyway, right? You've got the gathering and the crafting. They kind of go hand in hand. If you're a crafter in an MMO, you probably enjoy the gathering aspect of it somewhat too. That's what breaks up the pace. And to do this, obviously in Guild Wars 2, you're going to be exploring the world, and you get experience just from exploring. You get experience just from finding points of interest and stuff. And that's going to blur the line straight away. You're not going to get 100% of your experience entirely from crafting. Hell, just walking to the different crafting stations is probably going to give you some experience somewhere along the line. So I wouldn't be as excited as a lot of people seem to be, like claiming that ArenaNet are amazing and they're building a game just for crafters. I wouldn't go that far, and I think you'd probably be a little bit disappointed if you tried that. One interesting thing I have seen a lot of people talking about with this, though, is they're now seeing it just as an opportunity to level 2 characters at once. So you play through the game on your main, you make a second character when you create your first, and all the crafting materials you ever get on that main character, instead of selling them to the merchant or anything like that, you just start dumping them away in your storage. So then finally later on, when you've hit level 80 on that first character, you just ult over to your second one and just do all the crafting on there, and hey, all of a sudden you've got a second level 80. Don't think it's going to be that simple either. I really doubt that you'll be able to get all the crafting materials you need for all of the disciplines straight away from one run, and that's another reason why I think it would be very grindy if you were going to try and do this on a character. But hey, maybe that is a nice little bonus. Maybe it's kind of like starting your second character at level 30 instead of level 1, which is kind of cool, I suppose. You know, people aren't always going to be interested in grinding back through all that early stuff if they're now on their second character. But for me, I'm not going to try it anyway, because at the end of the day, if I've just rolled a second character, I want to experience progressing through the game on that character. I don't want to suddenly, you know, start off at a ridiculously high level that's possibly going to gimp me out of an enjoyable experience for the early personal storyline stuff. And that's a thrill of the game. The professions are distinct enough that I'm really not scared about getting bored playing through on a second character, especially if it's of a different race. That's going to change your story so much, and obviously then you can pick what order you're going to join later on. So I don't know whether everyone will do this, or as many people, you'd be surprised how many people have mentioned this right now, this is their plan. I don't know whether so many people will do this eventually. Maybe a year down the line when everyone's bored of rolling ults, maybe they'll start to do this. For me, I'm just looking at this as ArenaNet being really good about crafting and thinking about that kind of thing, enabling people to become pacifists, which is really cool. Some MMOs talk about actually enabling this kind of thing, but really it's not feasible. I think to an extent Guild Wars 2 is going to fall in the same camp, but hey, they're making the effort, and for that I really appreciate that. I will at some point on Guild Wars 2 Daily talk more about crafting, but frankly it's not something I've done so much of myself. It's really not. I am interested in crafting, and I think it will be a fun aspect to the game, but I just haven't got into it. I've been so distracted by other stuff in the beta so far that it's just not something I've looked at. But in time, Beta Weekend Event 3, perhaps. I wanted to cap the episode off with a question from No More Usernames, who keeps getting questions in. I don't know what it is. Maybe they're just asking good ones. 73294, sorry, who said, what do you think about World vs. World vs. World? In my experience, one team gets an early lead and just decimates everything from there on out. The other teams have their morale crushed and cease putting up a fight. It's not really World vs. World vs. World if when you enter the battleground, the enemy owns everything and has 50 soldiers on the field for every one you have because your server gave up hope. This is a big problem with World vs. World vs. World. I played a little bit of it this beta, and I certainly found this on my server. I was in 2 different servers over the Beta Weekend event, and it happened on both of them. One of the worlds just ended up decimating everything, and you're right, people lost hope. I think partly this is due to the fact that we are in beta. So people are not as invested in the home world as they might otherwise be. People don't truly appreciate the bonuses that World vs. World can get for their entire server in PvE stuff as well. I think that's a big part of it. And I think people don't really have pride, not real pride anyway, as much as you'll ever get in their servers for the beta, because they haven't finalised where they're going to be. I know I haven't, some people have, but I feel like it almost is a little bit pointless at this stage because the servers could change. There could be more, there could be less at some point. And really, I think just because it's a beta, people aren't so interested. If they see that they're losing in World vs. World, they don't care. There's so much other stuff in the game world that they want to go and see. There's so many different modes and things. At launch, for that reason, I don't think the problem will be so bad, but we can't ignore it. It does seem to be a really, really big problem. ArenaNet originally kind of, I guess, reasoned that because it was 3 worlds in battle, they've always said that these kinds of situations shouldn't happen because if one team starts to grow, the other 2 kind of form somewhat of an unlikely alliance and end up pushing into the team that's growing, and then things keep themselves in a kind of rough balance or check. I think that hasn't really happened, and I'm not sure whether that will ever happen with the way they've arranged World vs. World. Maybe in their original designs of World vs. World, it was a different system maybe that they'd imagined and people were going to be more encouraged, but I can't see why I'd ever be encouraged as a player of the green team to team up essentially with the blues to force back the reds. I really can't see that. I'd just go for any keep or any camp or anything I possibly could, regardless of who it was. In fact, in some ways, I could imagine myself going for the weaker team because they're going to be spread thin against the, the larger threat. I don't see it self-balancing itself in this way. Obviously, ArenaNet, though, have been taking statistics through the betas. They will have seen that this was quite a big problem, and hopefully they'll add some kind of mechanic somewhere along the line that stops this kind of process from occurring. What that could be, I'm not sure, and it's obviously not going to be something really radical because they have stated that World vs. World, for the most part, is mostly feature complete now. So whether they're going to refine existing features too much or add many more is questionable. It seems like it's mostly a point of polish here. But can we really say it's polish fixing this? Because this seems like a really big problem, and obviously it will just destroy World vs. World. If the game launches like it and everything remains that way, it will. It's going to remove that game type. It is so frustrating in World vs. World to try and do something and know, as you say here, that you're just one guy and there's going to be 50 of them to every one of you. It's very frustrating, and there's not much you can do as an individual player to fight against that. Sure, you might have some good moments if your entire guild were to get involved, but not everyone has the time to organise something like that, and not everyone's going to be in a guild like that. So it will be very frustrating if the game launches like this. I don't think it would be acceptable for World vs. World to launch like this, and I think there does need to be some kind of change. Though, I'm going to cop out, I don't actually know what exactly they could do aside from adding small buffs to losing teams, but in that case, that kind of diminishes any victory that someone might feel from having won in the first place, if you see what I mean, which I think might detract from the game. So, I don't know what they could do at the moment. Maybe you guys have got some good ideas, but let's hope they do something, because I don't want World vs. World to feel the way it eventually did by the time the beta was over for the 2 servers I was playing in. I definitely don't. Anyway, there you go, guys. That was Guild Wars 2 Daily for today. Like I said, a bit of news here and a question. Tomorrow, speaking of servers and World vs. World, I thought I'd start doing something interesting. It's basically a lore video, but it's where we start looking at the servers that you can play on in Guild Wars 2 and the names and what they're named after. Obviously, the server is a big decision that you make in the game. It's the first decision you make before you've even made a character. And aside from the region that the server's based in or what language people on it speak, a lot of new players to the game won't really care or know about what that server name or what it's named after or what it means. So I thought it might be cool to start looking at those, and we can have those and lore videos as well going on, so you guys get a rough idea of the backstory and what these places are named after. Might be cool. Let me know what you think. In any case, that was Guild Wars 2 Daily. Thanks very much for watching, guys. I hope you've had a good week so far, and I will see you tomorrow. See you next time.